I was approached to read for this lead character in a film about a couple going through, well, their marriage was falling apart. It was a very good script. And I read it, and I phoned my agent, and I said, I can't do this. And he said, well, what? Why? And I go, because I'm going through this in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that, if going through a divorce after 30 years of marriage, and how heavy and emotional that is, and I had to then spend the next 3 months in character who's going through a similar thing, and the angst and the pain and it's too much. It's too much. So I turned it down.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, would Judah be interested in coming in and read for the guy who the wife has an affair with? And I went, yeah, that's not a problem. Right.
That brings me to my next question, because one of the things you said,
more questions.
Oh yes, I got a list. I'm trying not to eyeball them too much.
Keep it coming. I'm having fun.
That's
okay.
Good. Well, this one is like about not going too far. I guess in a sense, what my question kind of taxes is the question of, there might not be going too far, but when is it too much in terms of crossing a personal line? And I guess that's different for everybody, but I mean,
what do you mean by personal line? What's a personal line?
Well, when you're mining from your experience, because you've got this data set of experiences and emotions that are tied to those, and for someone who's maybe lost a child, let's say, and you're in a scene, there may be lines you just don't cross. For someone who's going through a crisis in a relationship, and they're doing a film about that, but how much kind of caution is there, if there is any general caution at all, what's too much in terms of digging into yourself? Because some guys and girls go into the loony bin at the end of a production, if they're really throwing themselves deep into certain things.
Yeah. So from what I understand, there were a number of actors way back in the 50s and 60s who were method actors who hurt themselves. And again, from what I understand, they misinterpreted their job. So again, if I'm doing a scene where I have to kill someone, I'm not going to go out in real life and kill someone to get that experience, but I do know what it's like to wish that. We've all had these terrible thoughts. Mm-hmm. Let's not pretend we haven't. We all do, but most of us, again, it's a fleeting moment, and we move on because we go, well, I can't do that. But if let's say you're doing a scene about somebody who's lost a child, well, you got to go, is there a place where I know what deep loss is? And that deep loss to you might be when you lost your cat when you were 9 years old. Deep loss is deep loss. Who's to say, where you got to be on that dial? Right. At the same time, I'm a big proponent of not hurting yourself. So, for instance, if the actor has had some personal trauma, and digging into that trauma, they know could possibly send them reeling, I suggest you don't go there. Years ago, I had to turn down a movie because I was approached to read for this lead character in a film about a couple going through, well, their marriage was falling apart. It was a very good script. And I read it, and I phoned my agent, and I said, I can't do this. And he said, well, what? Why? And I go, because I'm going through this in real life. And I knew that, if going through a divorce after 30 years of marriage, and how heavy and emotional that is, and I had to then spend the next 3 months in character who's going through a similar thing, and the angst and the pain and the, I went, it's too much. It's too much. So I turned it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they said, well, would you be interested in coming in and read for the guy who the wife has an affair with? And I went, yeah, that's not a problem. Right. So I think that our mental health comes first. Right. It's like anything else. Health comes first. Mm-hmm. And if you know that going to a place that you might hurt yourself. You know, I heard somewhere along the way, reading some psychiatrists, some psychologists, that they were saying, if you have thoughts that you can't get out of, and feelings, deep feelings, within a couple of hours, mm-hmm. you might be hurting yourself. Right. So in other words, if you're using some past trauma, if you're able to get to it, some people just, they block themselves out. And that's a survival skill that we all have. But if you can't access it, you got to know, is that going to send me reeling off a cliff? Yeah. You know, psychologically. And you got to be honest with yourself. And I don't think any project is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it because I remember being on one show years ago, and I'm pretty sure the actress felt like she could handle it. It was fine in her view. There was just a scene where a guy was drunk in the scene and kind of grabbing her by the shoulders and roughing her up. And I don't think anybody knew, but she went through, you know, a number of takes. Everything seemed fine. And then we moved on to the next scene, and she wasn't around for the scene. And everyone was wondering where she was. She was in a trailer getting drunk because she just had this huge flashback of a past abuse trauma that she had.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, she said it blindsided her because she wasn't expecting to, you know, to equate that at all to her past. You know, yeah.
I've been on set. I remember I did a film years ago, and we were shooting out of town, and the lead actress said, would you come up and I have to talk to you? And I said, okay. So we met in the bar, and I said, what's up? She goes, the scene we got to shoot tomorrow, it's bringing back some heavy stuff. And I went, oh boy. She said, I just want to warn you in case I'm having trouble getting through the scene. Mm-hmm. You know, if it's a tough call, but you know, if I was in her shoes now, I would have either turned down the part, or I would go, I got to key something else that's happening in the scene.
Right.
And you know, it was an attempted rape scene. Mm-hmm. And she never told me what it was. She just said, I'm just letting you know. So it ended up that the shooting the scene was really tense, and I was so worried about her instead of really me focusing on my job. And she was worried about herself, and we were all worried about her. I think the director knew what was going on. So I think it kind of got in the way of the scene, to be honest with you, instead of going right to that point. And that was the, you know, it was an attempted, it didn't happen. It was an attempted rape. So yeah, you got to be honest with yourself and go, I can't do this. Or maybe I'll ask them to change the way it's written. Mm-hmm. Can we change it from this to that? You know, will that make a difference? And that's where you can sit down and talk to the writer or the producer or the director. Or like I said, if you have to, you bow out of the project because your health comes first.
Right.
It's a really deep discussion, but it's something that we all have to have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because we're dealing with emotions.
Yeah.
Right.